as well, these responses that you can have, options that you have to respond. For now, they're going to be static though. Alright, so, again, we can just do this. It's even set up the same way. And really all I have to do is just copy this, paste it, change this to surrender, change this to 6. Now we could leave it the same and tell them to go to hell, but then that gets repetitive. And I can't. Maybe something else I could do is say tell them to go frack off, but at the same time, I'm a little bit more couth than that. So let's say again, there's so many ways you can do this, but there's only one of them that's going to sound, or a few of them that will sound right. The first thing that popped in mind was telling them to, drop shields and power down weapons, but that's, from my marathon of watching the entire series of Star Trek Next Generation over the course of a month. It doesn't really work in this game because shields don't, block transporters or whatever, and weapons cannot be powered down. So we want to say alright, so that works. And those are done now. So, what was that? Let's see, that was 2001. It's in the current document. Oh, the trade, that's what it was for. The trading feature. That won't be added till 0.6a. Alright, so so I'm going to say if mp dot b n tail 1. So if this is true, then continue. Then go mp if mp dot bn demand is true, continue still. No else, because there's nothing we're gonna do if surrender is not granted from you. So now we need to figure out we do need to add in another, damn it, and hell, another one of those just to close off the if statement there. So we need to figure out now how this is going to work. So at this point, you've surrendered to your enemies, and we're just trying to figure out now what's going to happen to you. So there's going to be another series of randoms here, and we're going to have to do it in a for loop for every ship on your side. The way we'll do it for the player side is if you surrender, then your entire, all of your ships that are with you surrender. But you can do it, the NPCs, hostile NPCs, do it individually. That just works a lot easier that way, I think. So, I'm going to go ahead and use the, well, at this point we've used just AI task 1. We want to use AI task 2, I guess, for this one. So, B AI task 2 equals random. I'll go 1 through 90. It'd be so easy to just go like a 1 to a 6 on like a dice roll, but that's totally ridiculous if you ask me. You want to have a larger range than just 1 or 2, values. Something a little bit more substantial that has a greater randomization about it. Because you can get down to percentages, like saying hitting a 1 out of 10 is a 10% chance of something happening, which would be the same as saying 10 out of 100. But at the same time, 1 to 10, that's a larger number of times that you might be able to hit it out of 100. Again, while the actual statistics might be the same, the optics are not the same. I just don't like the fact, like, on these down here I did a 1 to 10 just because it's more of a more small thing to deal with, but like something like this, you want to have more chances, more ability to expand the ranges. Because let's face it, it's harder to hit a value range of 90 to 100 in a 1 to 100 range of values than it is to hit a 1 and a 1 to 10 scale. Just because there's more numbers that the computer can randomize to, and the chances of hitting that specific spot, while statistics say is the same as the 1 to 10 hitting a 1, common sense and deductive reasoning say that it's harder to hit that, because you have many more numbers to choose from. So, 1 to 90. So what will happen is now, is that we'll have certain things that will happen. For example, we'll say that having your ship stolen from you will be the most common thing to happen. So we'll give that a 45% chance of happening. So, if BAI task 2 is greater than or equal to 1, and BAI task 2 is less than or equal to 45, the next thing will be sold into slavery. Else if BAI task 2 is greater than or equal to 46, we'll give that a 29% chance of happening. So that'll be 85 or 75. And BAI task 2 is less than or equal to 85 or 75. And then the rest well, that's still like a 24% chance though. I want to make that smaller. Let's increase this to 83. So that'll be a 8. So it'll be a 37% chance for the middle one. And 84, so then a 16% chance of having your ship of having just to pay a fine or a fee or something graphed to be let go entirely without having to give up your ship or getting taken as hostages or whatever. Alright, so 30, we said 37. And the 16% chance. Let's not call it graft, that's something different. This is more of paying a ransom. That's it, ransom. Now, if the player can't pay it, then we'll just have it automatically auto select or switch to getting your ship stolen or looted. Alright, so this will have to wait till I add in, so let's say to do finish after adding stations back in. Let's see. To do figure I'm not going to do any of the code for this at the moment. Let's see. Write code. Alright, so right now all we have to do with this is just go down here and say mp dot battle and hail surrender, and we're done. Of course, then the player has to decide what to do with both the surrendered ships, but that'll happen during the rewards section. And now we'll do this, and I guess we'll call it for the night after I finish the move function here. So that's going to be handled in map. I think we have that open. Yes. All right. So we already have a movement, or well, is it here or in ship? I think it's in ship. Yeah, there it is. So we have an AI movement. Here's the player thing here, player ship movement. We want to pass through the same values here. Alright, so I've been trying to figure out how this should be done. It's a very kind of complicated question. How should the NPCs, the AI, be used in such a way to determine how it's moved? I'm also going to pass a bool that'll say ally. What that'll do is it'll say if the ship that's moving is an ally or not, and that'll determine what reference is used, whether it's the NPC reference or the player reference. So, let's go back over to the movement stuff down here. I actually think I modified this a little bit to, yeah, it displays the location and the distance between your ship and the target ship, as well as their positions through the menu or message processing function here. Still something added to so that you can have a better idea of what the hell where the hell you're supposed to move in what direction, you know, in order to get there. In other words, if there's a ship on, you know, Z minus 24 and you want to move towards it, you know what you have to move and which direction you have to move in, essentially. Instead of having to try and figure it out by entering in something and see what happens with the distance, like on the previous version of the game. You actually had to move in a direction, and then you'd have to see if that direction was properly aligned on the next iteration through the battle loop, because it would put up the enemy, your location, enemy location. So we're putting that inside of the actual loop now, the movement loop, so you can more easily track that. For the AI, however, it's not going to be an issue. It's a whole different set of problems, can of worms. So first void, ship, SM, or AI, move, yeah. Player and M player. NPC and M NPC and bool. Vool. 'Tis how Dracula says bool. It's vool. Bool ally. Alright, so first if ally and if not ally. Get that all situated out there first. Alright. So it's going to have to be something similar to this, but the problem is determining if the NPC, how the NPC detects if it needs to move. That's the big problem. You'll have the NPC will have the ability to come to here, but at the same time, it's got to determine if it has to move or not, and that's the big issue here. Because as the player, and actually having a brain, you can determine based on the targeting ranges for your weapons. Or like if you have a weapon spread that has lots of lasers in it and they have optimum ranges and you want to try to hit inside the optimum ranges, then you know where you need to be at. But for the AI, the AI doesn't have a brain, so you have to figure out how to do it so that it acts as if it does. Now, a lot of games will do something very cheap. A lot of strategy games do this. In fact, maybe most of them. They actually allow the AI to cheat. For example, if I was to allow the AI to cheat here, instead of actually doing my damn job, I would say, okay, so the NPCs will get a larger attack range, so we don't have to worry as much about moving. That's just total, pardon my French, bullshit. That's the one thing I hate most about games that do this, because it really pisses me off. If you have to make an AI that cheats in order to be able to challenge a player, then you have not created the AI. You haven't created something well enough to, well, you haven't done your jobs, by the way. For a programmer, you haven't done your job. You haven't created something that's good. You created a piece of crap, essentially, is what I'm saying. If your AI has to cheat to be able to stand up against the player, then you need to recreate the AI so it doesn't have to do that. Because you shouldn't have to have the AI cheat to be able to compete. That said, it is really hard to create an AI that mimics what actual human player can do. So there is a little bit of a mea culpa there, and a little bit of a no, shut the hell up, you're a dumbass for trying to doing it that way kind of thing. It's essentially heaven and hell mixed into a whole ball of clusterfrack again. So we got to figure out how to do this. My initial thought about it was to see, okay, we'll look at the weapon spread, and we'll look at the ranges for the weapons in the spread or the weapon system that I have selected, and we'll find the lowest mean and the highest mean of those two of the ranges for those weapons, and optimums as well if they have optimum ranges. And then we'll go through and figure out the range that you want the AI ship to be in. That's pretty complex and complicated. That is what I want to kind of go towards with the movement system, but at the same time, I don't want to have to create something that complicated in one of the initial alpha versions. That's more like something for the first beta version, or maybe in the next version of the alpha. It's a little too complex for just the basics needed to get the game running. So, with that in mind, what I thought is, well, we'll do a smaller version of that, which is we'll just look at the first weapon. The first weapon that's in the first weapon that's in the first slot, if you will. But then, that's the whole thing is then you have to track what the enemy is using to attack, if it's, what the attack type is. So that's totally foobar as well. So, what we're going to do is we're going to fall back on what I had set up in the last version of the game, which is just to say, if the AI, either the ally or the NPC AI, is outside of a certain max range of a target, even if that range is still within the range of a weapon that they have installed, they're still going to move closer. So, I think in the previous version of the game, I had it set to like a 15-kilometer max distance for whether or not an NPC would move toward, use a movement to move towards a ship. Well, I think we'll increase that to 20 kilometers here. Well, I think it shows 15 because that's really right in the middle of a lot of different weapons, or the max range of certain weapons. Let's drop it down to 13 now, because that'll be more in range for the lasers and the rail guns and heavy weapons. Not really heavy weapons; those are really a smaller distance, but rail guns and lasers, but still be able to do with the missiles. So that's the maximum range they can be, and then we'll have a minimum range that'll be, we'll say 8 kilometers. So 8 to 13 kilometers. If they're anywhere in there, they'll take, and they go to this movement, and they pass the conditions that we'll set up here in a second. Then they'll do a move towards the player, or if it's a certain combination of conditions, they'll take a move away from the player. And that'll just kind of simulate a sort of semi-quasi-smart, non-cheating enemy ship movement system that will take into account the ranges required for certain weapons and be able to deal with all that. So I think that'll probably be the best way to do it. So what we need to do is we need to first set up the variables to hold the randoms. Unless we already have some, but I don't think we do. Movement system, so let's go right down here. So int bool, no, int movement, your ship movement, rand 1, sm rand 2, sm rand 3. 3 should be enough. Alright, so we've got those now. So let's do these up here so that we don't have to do them twice, and they'll apply either way. So sm rand 1 equals random. Now we're just going to do again just kind of small randoms, 1 to 20. sm rand 2 equals random 1 to 10, and sm rand 3 equals random 1 to 6. So the conditions for being able to move, we'll have 2 sets of conditions. First will be that we have to have the certain range of randoms correct to move in a certain, either towards or away from the target. And then the second set of conditions will be that the ship is within that 8 to 13 kilometer range.